Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Wales of Wall Street. We have a quant video here today, QNT on the exchange. Guys, this is a topic and project that is absolutely formidable in the infrastructure of blockchain and cryptocurrency moving forward, and especially with the heavy orientation around central bank digital currencies at the very highest levels of finance worldwide. I'm very fortunate to have met a couple of the guys from the Quant team at various Digital Pound Foundation events here in London. And it's absolutely fascinating to see the progress that has been made and what is to come. Guys, before we go into a couple of topics, particularly around the digital euro, do make sure, if you haven't done so already, that you smash that subscribe button. And of course, it would massively help the channel out as well if you could kindly take a second to move that mouse cursor or your thumb on your phone across to the thumbs up button, the like button on this channel. That would be absolutely massively appreciated to get the content to more and more people, educate more people as much as possible around DeFi, crypto, blockchain, etc. So thanks very much in advance for that. Let's go straight into this topic. So what's really interesting in the last few days has been this relative announcement that the actual euro, or the digital euro plan, is going to be led by the architect of the landmark MiCA crypto law. Now, the reason I brought Quant into this conversation is because way back, I think it was a couple of years ago, when the MiCA law and frameworks came in, Quant was heavily involved and very narratively speaking around this particular infrastructure implementation. And I'm kind of putting the two together because there has been a lot of conversation in the past as well, heavily relating to the euro, predominantly through the Digital Euro Association, which we'll go into in a second, because they did have representatives from Quant speaking on those webinars back then as well. And of course, even more recently, Project Rosalind. So we covered this in a recent video with Millicent Labs through Kenny, which was a great interview. If you haven't watched that, I'll leave a link to that at the end of this video. But it's all starting to loop the conversations around. I was particularly interested in this aspect of the laws being drafted right now around central bank digital currencies. This is something that's scaling at significant levels across the world. I would argue personally that the regions like Europe, America, the United Kingdom here, we are progressing very well in these areas. But the Asian markets, for example, have been well ahead of the game for some time. I do feel like we're playing a bit of catch up, albeit that here in the UK, for example, we did just recently in the last month or so have the laws passing of the ability to use digital currencies, stable coins, cryptocurrencies in general, as legal tender, essentially. So full regulation and law coming into fruition this month, on top of the trade finance laws that passed in digital format as well, coming live, I think, 20th of September. So the UK has kind of put that narrative, the PR out there. The Americans have done quite similar recent things, and Europe is very much pushing ahead as well. Now, you've got to understand there's a lot of geopolitical aspects of this, hence why there's so many different projects. There's Rosalind, Helvetia, Jura, Icebreaker, all these different ones that are allowing all the different banking systems, financial frameworks, etc., to start talking to each other through API modules, cloud systems, etc., to really start defining, like, can we work together? What messaging services do we need? Hence why ISO 222 was such a huge thing in terms of the actual messaging framework behind these bank transfers and things as well. But this conclusion and projection of the utilization of interoperability, hence why Quant is so powerful in this area. There's no doubt that Quant will have to be used across a multitude of central bank digital currency systems, stable coins, and cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology in general. That's what it was kind of mainly designed for, was building the bridges. Whatever chain you used as a framework or within your own country's financial systems, the likes of Quant can pull those together. It's very quite clever, quantum technology behind it, cloud-based, API-based, etc., which really defines Quant's position in this space. It's quite significant. But what's really appealing, and we go back to this one, which is pretty much about a year ago, was the collaboration through the the Digital Euro Association. This is almost pretty much the equivalent of the Digital Pound Foundation that we have in the UK, which I'm very fortunate to attend those meetings. But you do get pretty much the same people going to each other's webinars. Certainly the think tank aspect of CBDCs usually has the same sort of companies, and certainly representation through those as well. And of course, back then we had Martin Hargreaves, the Chief Product Officer at Quant. He is very much in attendance on most of the Digital Pound Foundation ones, as well as these as well. So you can start seeing that there's partnerships already in place for these mechanisms, these frameworks to be built. And that's why I'm kind of putting it together. There's hugely valuable information here in terms of like some of the narrations from Martin from that webinar, which I'll leave a link to at the end of this video. But putting it back to this particular aspect of the digital euro, in the sense that they're really progressing fast. We know this is happening across the world, as I said earlier, and it's really almost a race, if you like, for countries and regions to start getting these implementations in place. I've always said that I do truly believe that CBDCs will come live around 2025, potentially around that November date, which is something that's we've mentioned a lot on the channel in the past. It's not a number or a date picked out of thin air. It was predominantly around all the timescales and the timeframes we've seen for our existing banking systems here in the UK through loads of webinars and research, etc. That everyone has defined all these projects going on, these pilot systems, etc. The RTGS actual engine to be switched on next year. So this is the remittance system, pretty much everything that powers the financial world. I think there's something crazy like £720 billion a day goes through this system. So that's the kind of magnitude of money that we're talking about here. And of course, blockchain in its formalities of transparency, processing, verifying, all the usual stuff with blockchain has a massive implementation factor to that. And November 2025 is arguably the month that the whole entire system gets fully switched on, as in point of no return. It's done, it's tested, it's trialed, it's working across the world, and here it goes. And that's where I feel that it's a really decisive moment to launch CBDCs. We're already in trialing pilots of CBDCs anyway, and that will take a year or two. Hence why I think it's quite interesting to see that line of effect. And if you look at from a market perspective, with the bull runs, the cycles, etc., it would arguably make sense that between that 2024 and 2025 markers, we would see a huge increase in the market price action of a multitude of assets within blockchain cryptocurrency, and even in the stock markets as well, as AI is extremely important part of this as well, as is IoT. So I would imagine that there's going to be a lot of companies and projects across the scale of things that are going to be incorporated together to make this really interesting next couple of years. And then, of course, the momentum building forwards towards the 2030 goals, hence the UN documentation of Agenda 30 and the World Economic Forum's push for all of that as well through sustainability, etc., the financial world, the fourth industrial revolution, and so on and so forth. It's going to be mega. So that's why I'm quite excited about Quant as a project in general, not just all the other things we talked about in previous videos, but stitching together what's coming, what's literally coming on our doorstep in the next year or two in terms of framework sign-offs, pilot sign-offs, and the actual full utilization integration. The utility is extremely important wording here, because it's all great with talk and webinars, etc., but it's not until the switch on occurs that's when it gets super exciting. And that's kind of what we speculate on mostly when we're looking at most of the blockchain crypto assets. Some people, of course, like to just trade every day, but for me personally, it's about the long term, the understanding of what blockchain really is, the power of it, and how the utility will be incorporated. And particularly, as much as people may or may not like central bank digital currencies, as an investor at least, we should be looking at, well, what's going to power these, or what are the systems, the ecosystems that are being built. And Quant is by far way above that aspect for sure, and I think it's going to have a humongous part to play in the aspect of the I keep doing that the wrong way around, the digital euro implementation, as well as many other CBDC piloting systems that are going on right now. But of course, that Project Roslyn report, I'll leave a link to this at the end of it. It's absolutely huge, but it's very, very fascinating. And Quant's development in this has been significant as well. It truly is something interesting to read through and get a better understanding of the use cases of CBDCs, how the frameworks are coming together, how Quant sits within this as well. It really is truly exciting to see this development. But yes, there's a lot of other projects and companies within this as well. And you can start piecing together, oh, actually, this is starting to make a lot more sense. So Quant was heavily involved in the vendor systems there. And there's a load of other people and companies, especially R3Corda. We know how big that is, especially in relation to things like XDC, Quant in general, of course. You've got people like Visa involved. You know, it's happening whether we like it or not. And that's the crazy thing, is now identifying, particularly in the crypto space, what projects are heavily involved in this area and understanding the magnitude of it, not just value-wise, but the actual utilization of it all. Really interesting stuff. And I'm just going to finalize on this point. This is very interesting. IBM, which is heavily involved with things like Hyperledger Fabric. This is a chain that's not really available to us as the public domain sort of thing, or as a retail user to adopt as a token in our portfolios. But IBM are absolutely huge in the blockchain space. I'm going to do a video on these guys very soon. But these guys are heavily involved in the framework, or at least the how to implement the digital euro to their citizens, to the wholesale banking, financial systems, etc. And of course, these guys are hugely technologically advanced. As we know, how long has IBM been around? Maybe 100 years, maybe just under. Absolutely giant company in the IT infrastructure systems. But we're going to do a separate video because they have some fantastic orientation around blockchain technology and what they're doing particularly. But again, it's that point that we are very, very close to this switch on, guys. Very close. Because we've got now the technological companies and partners coming into fruition right now to start the rollout. This is how close we are to it being live. So think about this, guys. We will follow this kind of progress as much as we can with the channel, as we always do. But it's definitely worth having a bit of research yourselves. As I said, I'll leave the links in the comments and descriptions below. But yes, Quant is a formidable partner in this, a formidable project, and certainly a massive integrator. And it's going to be very exciting to see those developments as time goes by. On that note, let's look at the price point of Quant very quickly. So currently trading roughly around $98.5 as of recording. If you notice back here, we did get a buying position come in around our $87 mark. Fantastic to see that. Personally, I did wonder when that would come in. I was getting a bit anxious that we haven't seen it for a long time, and maybe it isn't coming back, but here it went. It went actually down to a low of 85, so I'm keeping those buy order options still in there. Why? If you're new to Quant or these videos, I drew all of these wonderful circles a few videos back, probably about a few months ago, as to why I put these buy orders in these current positions. And I do still actually have one slightly lower. It's around $67, and it reflects this fib level here that we've got in fruition. This is taking one of the lower points back here in June last year, almost on a year identity, all the way back up to here in one of the recent high points, which we saw back here in October 2022. And it gives you a reflection that there's some opportunities to take advantage of. Now, it's not just always 100% guaranteed with these fib levels, but what it does tell you when you look in the history of the Quant token is there's very limited data around these particular areas, i.e. there's lack of support. So as we manage to float continuously above this kind of like $100 mark for some time, the stability of it is really good to see, but you can start seeing that the volumes aren't as big as they should be, and that's because we're in a bear, winter market, etc., blah, blah, blah. Of course, the token price itself is quite high in consideration to if you're looking at other tokens and assets. You can't always look at it that way because, you know, Quant can easily be a $10,000 token in the next 5 to 10 years quite significantly. But my point being here is that when we look at this data, we have to identify that actually that isn't a full support line. So we will retest these areas, and I have no doubt in my mind that we will come and retest those areas, you know, once or twice at least before we see a massive bull cycle run and anything like that in the future. I do have markers back down here because, of course, back here in June 2022, we did get as low as $43. I did take some up there, and I'm still thinking in my head, like we all do at moments, I wish I got more. But that is what it is. That's why I've got these slightly lower markers. Would it come back down to 40? It's potentially possible. I would say it's more on the unlikely balancing chart at the moment, but I do have some capital at those areas, not a huge amount, but just to accumulate enough to be happy and satisfied with that accumulation. But as I said, in the short term and in these smaller areas, we're talking about, you know, $20, $30 switch arounds here. There is definitely opportunity still in my mind. That's why I've got those areas in position on my KuCoin account, which I then transfer across to my ledger. Unfortunately, I think still using the Ethereum network, but it's not too bad. It's not too bad. But yes, that is where we are right now, and we're still balancing around this fib level here. It's really interesting. It's just been bobbling around $100 for so long now. We've had some uptakes to around $115 here and there. The last highest one really being back in June, which took us to around 120. So, you know, there's huge effect there. And if you are a short-term trader, there's great opportunity to take those advantages of the $20, $30 shifts that we just spoke about. And particularly when you see these dip downs, this is a lot of, not necessarily market manipulation, but things like big narratives occur. That was around the Evergrande one, I believe, from China situation going on over there in the real estate markets. Things like that can happen at any time, which is why I always have those dip positions in. But of course, there's things going on even today about the FTX situation where there's just going to be constant money being sold off over periods of time, which is almost one of the reasons as well why the market is so stable and not really moving too much. Because when we get those fluctuation patterns upwards, there tends to be some form of notion of a big sell-off, not just within the markets and traders, but external factors like the FTX situation where they're having to get rid of these multi-millions, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of tokens and assets back into the market. Obviously, they can't just do one big dump because, yeah, that'd be absolutely mental. So they have to do incremental stages. So we're going to see this constant sideways pattern, I feel, for another few months, certainly then maybe the next few to up to 6 months, who knows. But September's always quite an interesting month in general. So we've got to keep an eye out for this. Whether it's a downward trend or an upward trend, September is always a bit of a weird one, especially with all these weird like financial laws going through this month. How will that affect things? Will confidence come in? Who knows? Could we even see a little mini cycle towards the end of this year? It's going to be really interesting to see. That's why we do the DCAing. It's why we take opportunities here and there in the various different stages. I think that's a good strategy. It's certainly one that's worked for me personally. It's not financial advice. I'm just talking about what I do personally. It has been working thus far. Other few data points here. The relative strength index is down here at the bottom left. 14 days showing 39, 20 days showing 44. This is a good buy point for me personally to be accumulating quant. I don't buy significant amounts. I just buy them here and there, especially when they get to these stabilized moments. And as I said, I've got capital in these lower areas anyway. The performance side on the right hand side here, it's negative across the board, which is understandable in the winter crypto markets and particularly bear markets as well. And yes, it could be disappointing to the extent that, oh, well, if quant's so powerful, why is it in the red? Well, it is what it is in these markets, but we just need to understand what quant is, what's coming in the future. Simple explanation behind that is things like we talked about in this video, the other videos that we talked about, other channels talk about, and what quant's doing in general is absolutely gigantic. So when we look at these $100 prices, probably in 5-10 years, we'll probably be laughable because we do believe that we will hit those 10,000 marks. Certainly in the next bull run, I do anticipate at least, the very least, for quant to be hitting towards that $1,000 mark. If you remember how Ethereum operated in that last big, massive bull run, I was buying, I think, Ethereum around $75. It's 75 pounds. So I don't know what that was dollars at the time, maybe 80, 90. And it shot up to what, $1,000, $2,000 as it was being used. It was being utilized significantly, as well as people getting excited about Ethereum in general for its valuation from a trading perspective. But quant's going to be very similar. There's going to be a huge trading volume there and an opportunity to make a lot of money. But at the same time, there's going to be a lot of API application using the quant token, need to buy the QNT token to build the infrastructures on their systems and the bridging capabilities worldwide. That's where it gets very interesting from a utility perspective, because companies will buying up left, right, and center if they wanted to be a part of the party moving forward. So this is where we see a minimum in my head of at least 1,000, but certainly over the next 5-10 years, this could go absolutely parabolic, guys, into numbers, significant numbers, which is why I'm not too phased personally about getting those $100 marks here and there. But you don't always have to buy a whole one. You know, of course, fractionalization in crypto is very important to understand. It's all about the gain percentage, not so much the value of things. So guys, that last topic point there, thank you for watching this one. We'll see you in the next Quant update video. Take care. Bye-bye.